Hello, people of the internet, it's Amanda. So, we're in a different place right now, but of course, I will still do my weekly Kurosagi updates. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about episode 5. Now, episode 5 feels like a mid-series finale simply because they teased in episode 4 that it's gonna be the big Mikimoto versus Kurosaki confrontation. It's not even set just in Japan, but it made it seem like it's set in Shanghai, where Mikimoto ran off to after the entire thing about episode 4 if you're not yet caught up. So I made videos for the last 4 episodes, and I'll be putting the playlist down in the description below. But basically, Katsuragi instructed Kurosaki to follow after Mikimoto after Mikimoto also crossing Katsuragi, despite the fact that they're kind of like working together as well in different aspects of Mikimoto's Swindler life. So again, it all falls down into this complicated role of Katsuragi and how he's involved with basically everybody else that is around Kurosaki, and not just around Kurosaki, but everyone that has to do with this like swindling thing or community or culture that they have in India. But it seems like there's definitely a lot of like things that are deeper than that, and it's explored in this episode. So there's Chinese mafia involved, and since they're quote unquote in Shanghai, they use a lot of like Chinese language as well. We see Kaneko have a bigger role in this one since Katsuragi is in Japan. So Kaneko sort of like became the front woman for the other, like for guiding Kurosaki as he was there. There's definitely a lot of like conversations with, again, it's all about like 2 different mafia groups, the one with the Red Dragon and the Tiger King, and then there's also Mikimoto. So again, the thing with this is that Mikimoto used Katsuragi's name for the whole like swindling thing that he does in this particular episode, and it's sort of like this thing where Mikimoto is doing his thing, and then Kaneko and Kurosaki is trying to relay that Mikimoto is betraying everyone because Katsuragi isn't really into it. So Kurosaki himself knows that he was sent there not for his own like agenda, but because he's representing Katsuragi, and again, they have a very complex relationship and stuff like that. And so there's definitely a lot of like conflicting emotions and things that he conveyed later into the episode, saying that he feels like he's just being used as a tool of Katsuragi, and but in usual Katsuragi fashion, like he just dismisses whatever Kurosaki's complaints is and just tells him to just get on with the job that he was asked to do. And yeah, so again, it's a very, very complicated thing because it's not just the usual swindling thing that they're doing, since mafia is involved. So lives are put into danger. Even Kurosaki himself got into like different compromising situations. Mikimoto himself also knows as to how dangerous it is in getting involved in all these things. So things definitely got a lot more complicated. And even Kashina, who is a police officer, is so funny because, again, with Japan, they're the most powerful passport in the world, so they can literally go anywhere. And it's so funny how just Kashina, I mean, obviously there wasn't really an actual traveling that happened, but in the plot there is. And then Kashina also followed Kurosaki to Shanghai after talking to Torara about, this entire thing of why he was so insistent in going after Kurosaki. And then Tsurara also explains her side as to why she feels more empathetic towards Kurosaki, even if she also aspires to be a prosecutor, and that she doesn't really agree much with Kurosaki's ways. So there's definitely a lot of like conversation about these people on one end who understands Kurosaki and his motivations, but would rather do it in a different like process, whereas there's this other aspect of, you know, Kurosaki's life as a swindler. With everything that happened in the episode, obviously the main highlight of it is a confrontation between Mikimoto and Kurosaki, and Mikimoto was backed into the corner. Kurosaki technically won in terms of backing Mikimoto in a corner, but then at the same time, like when they had their confrontation, Mikimoto kind of like still in the end taunts Kurosaki about, you know, his entire situation, telling him that Kurosaki is doing all these things because of his family and because of his father specifically. But then after Katsuragi took him in, it's very evident that Kurosaki considers Katsuragi now as like his new father, and that knowing how complicated everything is in the relationship and stuff like that, like Mikimoto emphasizes that Kurosaki's revenge doesn't end with him, and even if they have this like moment, it's not over. Kurosaki asks him what does he mean, but then Mikimoto obviously tells him that he can just find out things for himself and stuff like that, and gives him the option to, you know, like gives him a gun and gives Kurosaki the option. But then Kurosaki, very similar to the first episode, he says that he's not a murderer and that he just walked away. And I was really, really shocked that like Mikimoto just decided to take his own life, and Kurosaki heard the gunshot as he was walking away, and then Kashina also finds him in the middle of it, and Kashina kind of like says something to him, but then everything was such a blur. Kurosaki walks out, and then that's everything, like all his frustrations and pain, his anger and stuff, and yeah, it just all pours down like crazy. And the realization that, you know, Mikimoto's gone, everything that led up to the particular moment that he felt like would give him satisfaction in order to avenge his family, it never really ended with anything, and it doesn't feel like a victory at all, and he just breaks down, and then that's where the episode concludes. It's also interesting because earlier into the episode, there's this bank executive who was seen talking to Katsuragi, and then later into the episode it was revealed that he was actually related, or is the uncle of the teacher's assistant who likes Turara. So everyone else is very complicated and is into this business. It seems like even if it's the end of like one chapter or one big chapter for Kurosaki and why he's doing what he's doing, it's just the beginning of like everything else that's going to unfold. And again, at this point, I'm not really particularly sure where they're taking the story. I saw the preview. It seems like Kurosaki, he's dressing in a lot more color. My thoughts for this particular episode, I would say that I was actually expecting that they would make it very over the top and stuff like that, especially with the preview from last episode where it's all about fighting and all those things. But I was really happy that it still had like some sort of like the tone and the vibe of the episode was still good. Like there's enough balance of just the dramatics and then still the narrative of things. I thought that they were really going to the extreme, since again this is a big confrontation. I really like how, again, it explained how, it not really explained, but really showed how complex everyone's relationship is, not exactly with Kurosaki, but with Katsuragi, and how basically he seems like the puppet master for basically everything, and Kurosaki is aware of that. But again, Mikimoto also explained that given the complex relationship that Kurosaki has with Katsuragi, and it seems like, you know, Kurosaki is a lot more on that emotional front as compared to Katsuragi, who we never really know like how he actually feels about Kurosaki as somewhat like an adopted child to him. I would really like to see all of those things unfold in the later episodes, and I like how they really gave it a really good foundation in episode 5. I like that in order to make it a lot better, like not the actors forcing themselves to like keep on speaking in Chinese, which is used in the episode, they used technology in a way to mediate like that challenge, whereas Kurosaki is using an earpiece, and then the mafia lords are also using earpieces so that they're able to understand each other, and then the translation is being fed to their ears directly. Whereas for Mikimoto, he uses a more traditional way where he has a translator, his assistant with him to do all the negotiations on his behalf while he's there. Which also shows like how different like their dynamic is as Kurosaki and Mikimoto, where Kurosaki is definitely this more modern type of swindler who does all these things, who deals with all these things in a very, you know, like in his own standpoint. And then Mikimoto, who's a lot more seasoned, still uses like the more traditional methods. So again, these like juxtapositions between these two characters is really good, but at the same time, they're just both being in this at the palm of Katsuragi, and I don't know, like again, those like little details I really enjoy. I enjoy how, like again, that scene between the executive and the teacher's assistant, whose name I keep on forgetting, like that was a very brief scene and it was so easy to like miss. I like the cinematography for this episode specifically. I do think that TBS dramas are really good in terms of camera work and direction and stuff like that. Episode, the use of smoke, the use of shadows and lights and framing, I think is really good. Especially in that scene where I also like how in the scene between Mikimoto and Kurosaki, there's a lot more tight shots that are being used, not a lot of wide shots. And the tight shots are giving us more of like their emotions and their expressions in that scene and the intensity. And it doesn't really have to be this like rapid back and forth but it just lets you simmer into the emotion of whoever is speaking and whoever is reacting to the other person. And I really like the direction of that final scene between the two of them. I do feel like Bando-san really did a good job as Mikimoto. Even if again he's just present in very small intervals in the earlier episodes, I really loved him as Mikimoto. I do feel like he definitely has this like very nice sinister vibe to him that really added to the character, that he seems like, you know, he's just very calm and stuff like that, but then there's a certain viciousness to him, and I don't know, just I really like it, and I think that he made the character really effective. And that ending, it wasn't something that I expected from his character, but at the same time, I feel like I kind of expected it, but I didn't kind of like expected it to go as how it went. You know, I thought that he was gonna be more, I don't know, like that kind of ending with the villain that the hero is going after is just back at the corner, and then they're still very chill about it before deciding to still take their own fate in their own hands. To be honest, I think that kind of like the way that the events went, you know, it's something that's very cliche and something that we've seen before, especially in these types of genres. But I still think that it's very effective in how that entire scene played out. I like that, you know, Kurosaki didn't even hesitate in a way, because I was expecting for him to like hesitate even a bit, or like even consider it, you know, to consider to just do it, but he never did. And it kind of like shows as well like how firm he is in his word, that he's just doing this, but he's not, at the end, like he's not gonna turn into the very people that took his family from him. And I really liked how that entire scene played out as well. Again, I do think that very brilliant acting in terms of the cast. There's just also a small moment about Katsuragi and him trying to gauge Tsurara and trying to see through her, that she's starting to develop feelings for Kurosaki, and he has this very like knowing look in that particular scene. So again, these little details, I love like the intensity of it. It's just, I personally kind of just find it funny whenever Kashina and Kurosaki is in the same scene, because they always end up like shouting at each other, or like screaming at each other. They just can't have like a normal conversation, and I do feel like it says a lot about, you know, their dynamics as characters as well. I love that Kanoko-san definitely had a lot more participation in this particular episode, because I always love her, and I do feel like she's very, very pretty, especially in her outfits in this particular episode. I like that there's not a lot of like emphasis on the romance aspect, especially in these particular like moments. Like, it's there to build up the events for like the next episode, but you don't really play off of it too much to distract you from the main narrative, which is good. Other things, again, I just really like how, in terms of just everything about this episode, I like the pacing and stuff like that. But most importantly, I do feel like, again, the highlight of the episode is Sho's acting. He definitely did so well in terms of at first, in the earlier parts of the episode, he was just acting very, again, the whole like childish facade that he has, the more playful side to him. And then eventually, there's so many emotions that played off in this particular episode: the fear, anger, confusion. When he was asking Katsuragi about, you know, like being used and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of like build up. That confrontation with Kashina as well, like he was so angry, but then tears were welling up in his eyes. And then that final scene, that breakdown scene, is just so good. There's always like crying, and then there's crying where the breathing comes from the chest, and it just, like, the sound is just so hoarse, and that scene was just really nice. And again, you just feel like, again, from the moment of him being just looking very numb, and then it suddenly just crashes into that, definitely very brilliant. And again, it's really exciting that, you know, to see him be able to like to face these seasoned actors and to play off like these dialogues and these emotions in a scene and not stick out in a bad way. And I do feel like it's definitely, you know, a lot more prominent in this episode, and I'm really looking forward to next episode, because I feel like it will have a lighter tone, because it'll set up something bigger that will lead to the finale. But this is definitely, like, again, I feel like if you're expecting something that's big and explosive and anything for this particular confrontation, because of how big a deal Mikimoto is supposedly in terms of Kurosaki's story, then it would make sense. But it's not like that at all, and I do feel like I like how it ended, because it explains that there's still more to the story than just this big confrontation, and it's not just going to end with them, as Mikimoto said. So yeah. Now, with that, so tell me down in the comments below what you think of this episode. Are you super excited about it? Things that you liked, didn't like about the episode, and stuff like that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel and you would want to hear more from me, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you again soon in the new one.